Hi. In our history video today, I'm going to continue to go through the Civil War. And unlike schools where they teach it in terms of battles, Gettysburg, Chancellorsville, and so on, I'm instead going to focus on the politics that was behind the Civil War and going on during the Civil War. Last week we spoke about 1862 and how Lincoln had to scramble like crazy to keep the border states in the Union so they could serve as a jumping-off point for his invasion of the South. Now in 1861, really. Now in 1862, in the early part of 1863, things went terribly for the North. Loss after loss, defeat after defeat. And the Army of the Potomac, which was the main army outside of Washington, went through a whole series of commanders who were either inept and incompetent, like Hooker, or just refused to move and were too timid, like McClellan. In the West, Grant spearheaded a drive down through Kentucky into Tennessee and really made significant progress and fought a much more aggressive war. Histories all teach that. But what they leave out is the reason why some generals were passive and the others were aggressive. And the reason is that there were generals from the Democratic Party and from the Republican Party. The Democratic generals did not go along with secession. They wanted the United States to remain united. But they were not all about wanting to destroy slavery, or the slave power, or the Southern aristocracy, or the plantation society. So when they invaded the South, they walked on eggshells. They didn't confiscate food from anybody. They didn't burn anything. The homes were left as they found them. I mean, there were soldiers. There was some craziness going on, but basically there was a great deal of discipline. And then when the rebel cavalry would cut the rail line that was reinforcing the Union troops, they would very politely pull back, repair the line, and then go back on the attack, not wanting to plunder the countryside they were traveling through, because they wanted to restore the Union as it was. That's the phrase that they used. But the Republican generals, the newer generals that came along, saw the Civil War not just as an effort to preserve the Union, but to change the Union to eliminate the power of the Southern slaveocracy, the Southern plantation owners who perpetuated the slave system and tried to maintain an iron grip on the federal government to perpetuate their power in the institution. And they had a very populist aversion to that not only combined the demand for political freedom, but also had a sort of class warfare component of it, of attacking the slave oligarchy. And these generals, the Republican generals, were determined to break the power of the slave power that they thought ran the country, and they were right. And they didn't care. Not only didn't they care, it was a goal when they invaded the South to destroy it economically. Their goal was to live off the land, dismantle these plantation owners, liberate the slaves, burn them down, and basically break the power of the slave owners by disrupting and destroying the plantation system upon which they were based. So they didn't need supply lines. They didn't give a darn if the rail line was cut. They would just plunder from the countryside, not simply as an act of indiscipline, but because it was part and parcel of their war goals. And that led eventually to Sherman's famous March to the Sea, where he carved a 50-mile wide swath through Georgia, literally transforming the breadbasket of the Confederacy into an absolute wasteland. So it's important to understand that the transition from McClellan to Grant that took place in the Civil War and Union generals was not just a competent guy versus an incompetent. There was a political text to it. A Republican who was going to destroy the South versus a Democrat who wanted to preserve it at the same time that he conquered it. Now, this week, history and rights are very much in our mind because my wife and I have published the third book in our Dubs trilogy, Dubs Goes to Philadelphia. Dubs is our massive, wonderful, blonde-haired, 95-pound golden retriever. And in a previous book, he went to Washington, where he discovered the Lincoln Memorial, Washington Monument, and all that stuff to really teach children the greatness of America. And in the previous book, he ran for president to help them understand the political process. And now we continue this voyage of discovery of America and of American rights as he goes through the city of Philadelphia. So at the Philosophical Society, men spoke of new things. They were finished with tyrants and bullies and kings. Folks should be free, they certainly all knew, and Dubs thought dogs should be part of that too. So pick up a copy for your children or grandchildren or whatever between 4 and 8 at dickmorris.com, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or it should be in your children's bookstore. Thanks a lot.